Break the Cage MD. I decided to do this blog about I think I'll call it "Physician's Wake Up Call About the Future of Medicine." I like that title. So there's a couple of concepts, and I'm trying to break it down in a way so that it fits in Dr. Brains in a clear and simple, relevant way. Everybody remembered at one point what happened when Clinton and managed care got into the thing, right? Remember, I think I was pre med then, and I remember doctors complaining about salaries plummeting because when the government gets involved in stuff, they treat it like a business, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So we remember that, and then we forgot, and we get like when you're stressed, you get myopic. You think on a shorter timeline. You think about solving the problem here and now. So a lot of docs forget that at some point we're like, holy crap, this money's gonna jump out of this machine because the government isn't gonna overpay for anything. As a matter of fact, they're going to figure out how to make it as inexpensive as possible. That's one concept. Concept two, if you look around, you'll see that not only have physician salaries been dropping through government reimbursement for years now, it's predicted to continue dropping. Uh, in addition to that, you're also finding two other things happening. You have other services being designed to minimize the cost of running the overall operation. Because in business, at the end of the day, you're looking at ROI, return on investment. You're looking at KPI, key performance indicators. Okay, you want the outcome from the hospital, the result, with the same, with the least complaints, with the least cost. Now, who's the most expensive person in the hospital? Doctors. So if you could find a way to minimize the cost of the doctor by still using the symbolic presence of the doctor and introducing nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, um, just anyone that you can use marketing and turn into some sort of sub authority figure. That's the symbolic value of that person. You essentially can whittle the need for the physician and whittle the physician role down where it's much less expensive to have a physician around because you have them doing less. At the end of the day, docs are like, well, I'm getting 5 minutes with patients. That's all the patient needs, really, for what they have in mind for you. At the end of the day, they've extracted the knowledge that you spent years learning. That's your sunk cost, not the hospitals, not the business models. The business model is able to create other business opportunities by having other people learn pieces of your stuff. Nurse practitioners, um, psychologists in some cases, social workers, all these jobs. And look at how much nurse practitioners are getting paid, dude. They're getting paid. Okay. Their salaries come up, but not as high as doctors were. And by optimizing the machine, the cogs in the machine get reduced in value. They get commoditized. No one needs a magical singing doctor in the hospital. They just need you to be quiet, do your job, and you don't have to be hyper empathetic because another thing that's happening is something called value migration. At the end of the day, in a business model, you're looking at the lifetime value of a customer. Okay? So, which customers have the highest lifetime value? The customers that are wealthy. They spend more money. You need them to like you. Credit cards know this. That's why they charge a bunch of extra interest at the low end and they gift people on the high end. Rewards programs work the same way. Banks make a lot of their money through bounce checks and through overdraft fees and whatever, while people at the top get delicious stuff. In healthcare, the people at the top getting the delicious stuff are the people staying well. Okay? Because we're looking at a constrained model where you're like, okay, the hospital has to survive. Bull crap. The hospital does not have to survive because an investor doesn't care if he's investing in a hospital, a beach, or a strip club. It's a business model. You have a window of opportunity when a business model is going to have a high ROI. That window of opportunity eventually passes due to something called value migration. In our culture now, the value has moved towards wellness. There's a distrust of physicians. There's a perception that we're in bed with pharmaceutical companies, that maybe we're getting more of the money than the insurance companies. And they don't really want to hear your update of everything because you don't run the business model. You don't run the press. You don't run the voice out there. At the end of the day, the hospitals are still putting out the beautiful commercials. The hospitals are still showing you as an authority so that they continue to make their revenue. Yet, a hospital is not as profitable as an internet startup, as a luxury spot out in Boca Raton where people are buying up mad drinks. You know, and it's not that a business is heartless. It's that when someone's going into a business, you have a 5 year exit plan in mind. If you can't show how that business is going to make a crap ton of money at the end of the 5 years, and some people have shorter exit plans. If you're lucky, you might have an investor who wants to go the 6 year exit plan, but good luck on that. So if you can't show how that business is going to make that person buku cash within that 5 year period, they're not interested. It's really that simple. If you happen to be, and I explained value migration, we moved to wellness now. What makes a lot of money is stuff like Reiki healing, wellness, meditation, yoga. People who have more money aren't dying from the cardiovascular disease and stuff. They have a higher level of self efficacy. They work out, they eat the nutritious food, you know. And another model to keep in mind, and this is more data, if you look at Sapolsky's work, you'll see that the same curve that we have with the obesity through when you pair it socioeconomically and the stress and all these diseases that are cortisol related, cortisol, stress, inflammatory, all those HPA related conditions, if you go look at the work that Sapolsky did with stress and with monkeys, what you'll find is they had the same cardiac profile. Remember, like there's two types of obesity distribution, and the apple distribution and the pear distribution. Um, when you look at the distribution in monkeys, they have the same distribution of fat in the lower socioeconomic monkey classes, like the lower social ranking. It's a cortisol thing. Yet in our culture, um, you know, we don't think about the fact that hypofrontality, which is a stress related condition, um, is related to this obesity, this heart disease, this stressful jobs. 40-hour work week, 50-hour work week, two jobs. That's not crap people doing on the higher end. People aren't sitting down on a high end job, you know, in a cubicle. And people aren't worried about losing their job all the time. And it's a different life. So now let's go back to what happened to doctors who, in a business model, are just considered highly skilled, expensive cogs. Okay, you're going to minimize the cost of the cogs. It's common sense. Okay, but the cogs themselves are being, and if you look at emotional labor, it's a concept of making someone smile, and because they don't realize that their emotions are worth money. It's a great concept to look into. Physicians are doing a large amount of emotional labor, where anytime you're holding back your real emotions and letting them bubble up, you're doing emotional labor. Anytime you're not being authentic, anytime you're not having agency, self-expression, that's emotional labor. And in the higher ends of society, they pay for that. As physicians, I think a lot of us came up from middle class with middle class work ethics, and we work hard, and we believe in the value of hard work. And you always hear work smart, not hard, but we don't necessarily translate that when we're grinding it out because brainwashing. But because the way the culture is engineered, physicians were servants. It's an honor to serve people, etc. Yeah, that's a great story to tell yourself. But once you hit a certain amount of income, you're supposed to start investing. And the first place to start investing is in yourself. You have to understand how the game works so that you're not doing the John Brown thing. I think that's the guy that went up against the steam machine and like he beat the machine, but his heart burst. You know, a doctor's brains are going to burst. I mean, these computers are learning semantics. Anything that you can memorize in a linear way, a computer could beat you top down because a computer learns geometrically. And if you Google physicians, medical school, gist learning, it's going to say that medical schools are like, oops, we probably should have taught them the stuff in gist learning. But you can't learn gist learning in a stress environment. A stress environment leads to bottom up learning, which is works propositional working memory, if you want to go geek about it. Whereas top down, gist and theme based does implicational working memory, themes, narrative, story, all that stuff. Those are both working memories. Propositional working memory always ends up with a gap. If you want to look up propositional working memory and suffering, you'll see why mindfulness is really about using your implicational working memory. But I'm going off into geek zone. The bottom line is that if you were taught stuff bottom up, until you learn to flip the top down cognition, critical thinking, Google physicians critical thinking, and you'll see like some articles about that as well. Until you're taught abstract reasoning, until you're taught to notice the patterns instead of all the details from within a tunnel, within a sub branch of a sub branch of a subspecialty, until you can think outside of that, you're not going to see the larger, more abstract patterns. So, having switched from medicine over to software engineering, what I found was At one point, I was programming an action script, and they were paying us $150 an hour. That crap was lovely. A couple years later, the salaries plummeted. So then I learned a second language, learned it well. Um, this was during the iPhone craze, and cats were making a lot of money on iPhone apps. So they were paying people, if you caught the right place and you had the right reputation, you could make $100 um, an hour. So that was cool too. But then that plummeted. These are ecosystems. This is the value migration I was telling you about before. You got to recognize when it's happening in the abstract, and then you have to be able to see how these patterns replicate, not just in medicine or in science or in illness, but in life overall. That's basic transcontextual thinking. Everything you've learned in medicine, once you relax a bit and change your thinking style and flip it to top down thinking, which is what the whole concept behind Break the Cage MD is trying to get people to see. Once you start being mindful and start doing more responsive, self aware evaluation of A, where you are in the system, B, where the system is headed, and C, all the opportunities that physicians have if you just change your way of thinking and relax from the identity threat and realize that there's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity because of the trust and the relationship that you have, all the brain power you have, all the work that you've done. Physicians in the modern environment are in the best position if they invest in themselves to make a boatload of money. A boatload of money. But you have to publish. You have to learn fundamental marketing structure that you should have learned. You have to reignite the part of you that's connected to your core so you can understand how core values propel a brand, how core values make you magnetic to your audience. You have to understand the basics of analytics so you can predict what your audience wants and realize that you can do all this stuff because you know the math, you know all the stuff. You're just too married to the medicine. Divorce that young lady. Anyway, Dr. Manny from Break the Cage MD. That's the wake up call. Boop.